I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? This is Brian at WhisperStatus74. Welcome to the community, welcome to the channel. If this is the first time you are seeing me, please consider liking and subscribing. We're real tech for real people. Today's video is a Sony A80J OLED at 77 inches. It is a bright room performance video. It'll be going against the 2017 Sony 900E at 75 inches, which is a little bit higher up on the wall. The reason why the 900E is up so high is it was placed on the same bracket as my older plasma. I typically wouldn't have LEDs that high. So when the A80J is repositioned, it'll be in the middle of this wall, more chest and up, not so high. Having them so high, especially LEDs, as they do bloom a lot from below and off angle. I want to do this video because simply in the comments or in other videos, OLED is kind of totally taken out of the conversation in regards to bright room. You keep hearing, hey, for dark room, OLED is king. For bright room, LED is king. I don't 100% agree with that. I enjoy LEDs in bright rooms. I enjoy LEDs in dark rooms. I do love seeing the high peak brightness in a dark room. I love that contrast. Yes, they do perform better in a bright room as they are brighter, but I would argue that the OLED still keeps its depth in a bright room. The reflection handling is not the best. It's not the best on the Sony either. If you want the very best reflection handling, you have to go to Samsung. They are absolutely the best in the business. But to discount OLEDs, they don't belong in a bright room, is almost like saying, yes, LG OLEDs are better for gaming, but to say that Sony can't game isn't really accurate. You can do both. My cat is going nuts right now, but it's a little bit of a misnomer to say that it can't survive in a bright room. I think they do fine in a bright room. I will argue again, the contrast ratio is still evident. They're both in their cinema mode. Live color is enabled on both of them. They're both in the same color preset. So what we'll do is we'll show you the room. We are in my main living room. I have a sun porch here with some windows. I have tons of windows in the dining room next to it. I have windows behind us. I will redo this video with the A80 by itself when it's hung. That way it is facing the windows. But I figured while I have them both next to each other, I would still at least show you them versus each other. The one thing that's going to help the A80 in this area is I do have furniture in the way, so it is blocking the windows a little bit. You'll still see the windows on the screen, but just letting you know, that's what's going to give it a little bit of an advantage. But I still think it'd be an interesting video because regardless of direct sunlight, the room itself is still pretty bright. It is, you know, June, it's Father's Day in the middle of the day, so it's fairly bright. But again, if you have direct sunlight all the time from above, yes, LED would be the better option. But let's just show you the comparison. And I'm not even going to use a tripod for this. I'm going to show you some demos and just walk around the room and film. All right, guys, here we are. We're going to do this old school, no tripod, no setups, just the demos playing and showing you the room. Now, this furniture is pushed back. The whole room's been a little more in disarray as I try to make room for these TVs. This furniture is typically someplace else. But, you know, you have that sun porch there playing a role. As we go behind us, you have these windows here that play a role. You have this door playing a role. You have these windows here. So, and I also put this light on. Now, the reason why I wanted to show you the layout of the room in that regard is you can see more reflections on the Sony as it is directly facing the windows. So there is the reflection. You can still see me. You can also see that lamp. Now, the A80 obviously isn't facing them, so we will show you as we sit down. Now, you won't see much reflection in regards to the A80. Obviously, it's not facing, but you can see the window near the dog's nose. Now, I'm slightly off angle. I'm sitting down. But even with the windows gone, the room is very bright, and you don't lose any contrast ratio on the OLED. It does have more depth to it. Now, as we go into the center of the couch, which would be the seating position that most of you would be in. Now the reflections are still on the LED. Now the OLED, if you really look on it, you can see the reflections of both. You can see me sitting there too, right? Now we're off angle on the LED, but keep in mind the LED is nearly 1,000 nits. So its whole, the peak brightness makes up for the reflections isn't really the case. It's really the coating on the screen. Now I don't think the 900E was amazing reflection handling wise. But as we focus just on the OLED, it would be up probably in the middle of the two displays. You would see where the OLED would go. So there's a reflection there. If I point down to the OLED, you can see the reflections of that same windows on it. Now again, I'll repeat this test with the OLED by itself. It'll be up higher on the wall, as I mentioned. Now we're also going to get up, and we're going to sit in this position here, off angle. And even in the bright room, the OLED still looks fairly bright and vibrant, almost as bright, if not brighter, due to the contrast ratio than the LED. Now, as far as making these testing conditions easier, keep in mind both TVs are over 70 inches, 77 and 75. It's already disrupting the entire environment just having them in the room. So I can't do them side by side. And as I already mentioned, you will see the A80 in a separate video on its own, how it performs in a bright room facing the windows. And like I said, you can see some of the reflections on it, but there are reflections on the Sony as well, Samsung being king of that if you want to get rid of all reflections. Now you can see the real reflections of the OLED as well. But again, very bright room. You know, windows everywhere. But I wanted to kind of put to rest as well, forget about just the windows, but where an OLED will all of a sudden look dim compared to an LED when the lights are on or when the sun is out. So even though it's not reflecting on the panel itself, it's still bright in this room. So it's not just reflection handling, it's light control. Meaning that the LED doesn't all of a sudden look like an OLED because it's bright. This cat is making me nuts. This dude gets bored. Look at him, he's in the background. You hear him? Whew. Cannot wait to have the home theater done. Now they're both in cinema and they are both in warm. It's just the way the color is on. They are very different. Live color is enabled on both. That's why the OLED looks, you know, so much more saturated. Forgive me for not using a microphone. So you are going to hear cars and dogs outside. Now as we get up, here's the Sony dead on. And here is the OLED dead on so you can see the windows on there. So there's the reflection there. Oops, and the reflection there. I'll tell you, if you want your house to feel small, put these monster TVs in a main room. So again, this is a dark demo, so you can actually see the OLED a little bit more, how it would perform. Now this is less on the LED versus the OLED. Again, this is an older LED. The reflection handling wasn't the best that year anyway. But I kind of want to show you also how the OLED's vibrancy and contrast ratio stays consistent even in a bright room. And the reason I'll mention it again is sometimes people skip through the videos. I will do this video again when I have the A80 on there by itself with all the windows and everything open. But we can both agree, or all agree, it's a pretty bright room. If your room is brighter than this, and like I said, you have skylights above you, yes, then an LED would be a better choice. And I agree that LEDs are better choices for bright rooms, but it's not the end-all, be-all, and you're missing out on some amazing picture quality if you're basing it solely on brightness in regards to a bright room or on reflection handling. Don't limit your options that quickly, or that easily, I should say. And the reason, even though the Sony doesn't have great reflection handling, what I'm trying to show you is the peak brightness doesn't really help all that much. It doesn't make those reflections disappear. Now what I do want to show you is I grab the remotes. Now what's funny with comparing these TVs is you actually need to use the remote that came with the A80, and I have to use this remote simply because the Sony one controls them both. So as we step out of that one and go into just the YouTube menu, what I want to show you is the black level in the bright room. So just on the YouTube menu, these are my demos, how black that is and how gray, even on a full array LED, it becomes, right? So you'll see the reflection handling here too. You should be able to still see it here. There it is. And then we're going to go off angle. I want to show you how off angle, how much different they look. How off angle the VA 900E looks like an IPS. And how vibrant the OLED still looks. So here it's less about reflections and more about contrast ratio. And random cats playing in the corner. Get out of that frame. Now we're going to stay with this Hisense demo, off angle. Again, this isn't killing LED. What I'm trying to show you is that how the contrast ratio remains in a bright room, because that's part of it. It's not so much about reflection handling for many people. They really do believe that once an OLED is in a bright room, its contrast ratio disappears. Same with LED in a dark room. Their contrast ratio, to me, if you have a brighter LED, it doesn't really wash out unless it's, doesn't have high contrast ratio. They look amazing in a dark room. And this is a punishing demo from Hisense. So this way you can see that the windows are visible in both panels. So again, to wrap up, to be in a room much brighter than this, and you want reflection handling to be paramount this year, the QN90A is going to be your best choice. But again, the thoughts, here we'll even do this. Everyone says get some blinds, all right? So I'll go here. And obviously that helps a lot. And once this TV is mounted, my room will be back to normal, so you'll see it in a more natural environment. All right, guys, thank you so much. Let me know what you think in the comments. I know the Sony is at a disadvantage. It is too high and the A80 is too low, but it's still an interesting comparison. They both look great still. But I hope I can kind of continue to say that the contrast ratio doesn't really suffer in a bright room. There is reflections, but the contrast ratio doesn't look changed. The black levels are still deep, and the brights still look very bright. All right, guys, thank you as always. Love you guys. I will see you in the comments. Take care.